Hello and a very good day. Thank you so much for joining in on this webinar. My name is Abhilash. The people here at ManageEngine call me Abhi, and I will be your presenter for today. Now, before we go ahead and jump in, I would like to thank all of you for taking out the time. Now, I do understand that this is the middle of the week, and with the pandemic, most of us are working from home. It must be a busy day, and I would like to thank each and every one of you for taking out the time and joining in on this webinar. Now, before we go ahead and jump in and see what's in store for us today, I would like to run a quick audio and video check because we're all working from home. I'm working from home, and I wanted to make sure that the audio and the video are reaching to you well and clear without any distortion or without any breakage. So, if my voice is well and audible without any distortion, without any breakage in the audio, can you give me a confirmation using the Q&A tab, please? Just say yes, just say okay, just say great, so I can confirm that my voice is reaching to you well and clear. Thank you, Stephen. Just waiting on a few confirmations, guys, before we jump in. Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you, Mervin. Thank you, Sandakalum. Thank you. Looks like everything is okay. I hope you guys can see the video as well. That's the title and my email ID. If everything is okay, and at any point in time, if you feel that the audio is lacking or there's a lag between the audio and the video, just let me know and I'll try and get that fixed from my end as much as I can. Now, before we jump in, I would also like to tell you that this entire 40 to 45-minute session will be recorded, and the recording will be sent to your respective email addresses as soon as the webinar is done. Probably within the next 1 to 2 days, the recordings will be sent to your respective email addresses. If you need the slide deck, just let me know using the chat window right here, or just drop me an email, and I'd be more than happy to share the slide deck with you as well, right? So the topic for today is understanding the building blocks of a SIEM solution, right? So the reason I chose to speak about a security incident and an event management solution today, or a SIEM solution in shorter words, is because in the past, we've conducted a lot of cybersecurity webinars, right? If you've attended my webinars before, if you've been a part of one of my webinars before, you would have seen that we explore in depth the technical aspects of how a cyber attack could happen. We've even performed live security attacks in webinars before. And after such cybersecurity or cyber attack webinars, or after such webinar series, I often get a question from many admins, many people around the world asking me, which is the best way to detect such attacks on your network, right? And my answer to that is pretty straightforward. Just adopt a SIEM solution, that can look into different aspects of your network and that can generate alerts if there is something malicious, something suspicious, or something sensitive happening, right? And the next immediate question I get is, how do we choose the perfect SIEM solution? What do we need to look for in a SIEM solution? How do I know if my SIEM solution is up to the standard or not, right? So the idea behind this webinar is to walk you through what you need to have in a SIEM solution, the building blocks of a SIEM solution, right? Because we've seen plenty of attacks. We've seen how cyber attacks happen. We've seen how certain permissions, certain misconfigurations on an Active Directory network, for example, can be leveraged by attackers, how a network can be broken into. Now let's take a look at the defense part of it. Let's take a look at how adopting a perfect SIEM can help you detect such attacks on your network, right? So today's webinar is all about the factors, the features, the capabilities that your SIEM solution must have. So if you're thinking about adopting a SIEM solution, then this webinar is for you. If you already have a SIEM solution, hang around anyway, because in this webinar, we will see the must-have capabilities of a SIEM solution, right? So why do we need a SIEM solution in the first place? It's no secret here that attackers are continuously developing new methods, sophisticated techniques to break into your network, right? The goal is the same. The goal is always your data, your company data, your organizational data, or even to break the security or to expose your network. But then the methods of attack are gradually changing, right? As years go by, attack methods are becoming more and more sophisticated and are becoming more and more difficult to detect. And traditional antivirus and anti-malware solutions, well, they cannot detect sophisticated attacks on your network anymore. That's where a SIM comes in, right? So the idea of a SIM solution is that it can take the logs from various devices connected to your network. It can bring the logs to a single roof. It can help you filter, sort through the logs, and it can help you generate alerts on specific events, right? So at its core, a SIM solution is essentially a way to fetch the security logs, to fetch the audit logs from various components of your network, bring them under one roof, and find out anything sensitive, suspicious, or malicious that's happening on your network, right? So a SIM, security incident and a security event management, is all about incidents and events. Now, when I say a security incident, I typically mean something that is triggered by an end user. For example, user has changed permissions on a file or folder. User has logged on to a system. User has changed the configuration of a database server or a web server. User has run a root command on a Linux system. User has modified the Windows registry. All such changes are user triggered, right? Hence, these are called security incidents. Security events are typically configuration changes on the devices in your network, right? For example, firewall rules are changed on your Windows system. Tables are dropped in a database server, right? Changes such as this, network configuration changes on the devices connected to your network are typically known as security events, and security incidents and security events together make up a SIM. So in short, a SIM must be able to capture the changes that are triggered by a user and also must be able to capture the configuration changes on various devices on your network. The changes in the configuration or in the information of the devices that are connected to your network, right? So we actually conducted a survey back in 2020 where we asked around 120 ITsec professionals and we asked them, hey, why do you need to invest in a SIM solution, or why have you invested in a SIM solution? And most of them told us that their primary purpose was to improve the security posture of the organization. And many of them said that, hey, my auditor recommended it. That's why we have a SIM solution to possibly help us with compliance purposes, right? For those who haven't invested in a SIM solution yet, we asked them why. And most of them answered that they did not know which SIM solution to choose. And many of them also answered that the high costs were preventing them from making the purchase, right? So people who invest in solutions, they mostly invest in SIM solutions for security purposes or for compliance purposes. People who did not invest in a SIM solution are not sure about the features that a SIM must have or are worried about the high costs, right? So in this webinar, we will discuss the key capabilities of a SIM solution or the key questions that your SIM should be able to answer. And the first question we have here is too many logs, right? So the most important capability, a SIM solution at its core is a log collection system, right? So there are many logs on your network. There could be logs from your Linux machines, from your environments like Active Directory or Azure. You may have your Windows or your Unix machines. You may have your database servers. You may have your web servers. A SIM solution at its core must be able to take the logs from all of these systems and bring them, centralize them under one single roof, right? That's the first and the most important feature of a SIM solution, right? Now, let me illustrate this with an example. If you consider your Windows environments, typically in a Windows environment or an Active Directory environment, you've got the logs inside something called the event viewer, right? And inside the event viewer, there are three kinds of logs. One is your security log, the other is your system log, and the other is your application log, right? Security log, as the name suggests, records every security change on your Windows domain, like logons, logoffs. If you have an Active Directory domain controller, then changes to your Active Directory objects like groups, organizational units, etc., right? System records system-based changes. For example, if there is a configuration of that server that was changed, if there is any ports on the server that was changed, if there were firewall rules on the server that was changed, then system logs will record such changes, and application logs will record changes on the applications that are hosted on your on-premise infrastructures, right? So if you think about it, at the core of it, your security logs offers everything you need. Every security change occurring in your Active Directory environment or your Windows environments is all answered by the security log, right? But the truth is, these logs are enough, yes, but there are also a few certain security logs split across your system and your application logs as well that you need to look into. Just depending on the security logs is not enough, right? So that's when a SIEM solution comes in, where it can take the security log, it can take the application log, it can take the system log of every Windows machine in your environment, bring them under one roof, so you can truly understand what's happening where on your network, right? Another thing I want to talk about was the format of logs. Now, all of these are in the EVTX or the EVT format. That's the format for your Windows logs, right? When you talk about your Linux systems or your Unix systems, your logs are typically in the syslog format, right? Typically, Linux has a central location called the syslog where it logs all its files. If there are daemons or if there are any other applications running on your Linux system, they have separate syslog files. And what admins do is they forward those syslog files to a central syslog file. And the syslog files format is different from that of the Windows file logs, which is the EVTX format, right? Similarly, speaking about your routers, speaking about your databases, speaking about your web servers, they record logs in different areas, and the format is also different, right? So a SIEM solution essentially should be able to ingest logs from all the devices in your network, regardless of the format, right? It should be able to take out the logs, and it should be able to centralize them under one roof, so you as an admin or security analyst can go through the logs to truly understand what's happening. Right? So in order to choose an ideal SIEM solution, you need to first consider the logging feature, where the logs must support various formats. That's number one. Your SIEM, it should be you can either choose a SIEM solution that is self-hosted, meaning hosted on your infrastructure, or you can use a SIEM solution that is hosted on the cloud, right? Either ways, the cloud service should be able to store logs in the cloud, and the self-hosted service should be able to store logs in the local server on your own infrastructure, right? The amount of time a SIEM solution takes to ingest logs from all the devices connected to the network must be at a minimum, and it would be even better if this was in real time, right? After you collect the logs, the next thing that is important that you need to look into is that these logs must be easy to sort, easy to filter, easy to search. Just collecting logs and bundling them up in a single location is good, but you should have sufficient search and filtering capabilities, which is also another crucial quality of a logging solution. And last but not the least, your SIEM, it should not break when there is a sudden influx of logs, right? For example, let's say you're trying to find something on your domain and you've enabled certain logs on certain devices. And let's say there is a sudden influx of 20,000 or 30,000 logs. When that happens, your SIEM must be able to take the heat. Your SIEM must not shut down, right? So let's say there is something suspicious or a security threat on your network. Or let's say a domain controller or a server has suspiciously just shut down or powered down in your network. That's when your IT department, your engineering department, or your DevOps teams, they start looking into the logs. And that's when your SIEM solution must be able to support, where your DevOps team or your IT team must be able to find the problem, find the log they need as quick as they can, so they can rectify the mistake, so they can maintain business productivity and continuity, right? So that's the first feature. Your SIEM must be able to support logs from various devices, regardless of the format, and it must be able to gather them in a single location. The second thing, a second important feature of a SIEM solution is the ability of the SIEM to understand the logs. In simpler words, the SIEM must be able to correlate the logs, right? Now, here's an example. If you see the illustration in front of you, right? This is a use case that I personally have noticed in one of the IT environments, and this is basically a user logging onto a server, right? So user logging onto a server, the user has entered a wrong password, may seem normal, right? The same user is logging onto another server, server two, and has entered a wrong password again and has failed the login again. Now the user has logged into a server three this time, but this time the login was a success, right? So without a SIM solution, these will be recorded as three separate login events on three separate servers. But with a SIM solution, your SIM solution will be able to tell you that, hey, the same user is trying to log on to all these servers. The first two times the user failed, but the third time the login is a success, right? Your SIM solution should also be able to break down other qualities or other properties of the user. For example, hey, this user account has not been used in 30 days. So why is someone using the account now? Has the user come back? And what other activities has the user done? Like, has the user scanned ports, or has the user run some commands on your network? Right? So that's my point here. A correlation feature in a SIM is important because it takes the logs, it studies them, so it can draw meaningful context or meaningful conclusions from the generated logs. Right? So a SIM should be able to automatically correlate and produce meaningful context out of the logs, but in some cases, you should also be able to build custom correlation rules, right? For example, let's say you know that there is a ransomware attack happening around the globe right now. For example, the coronavirus ransomware attack, right? You should be able to create rules in the SIM that will be able to correlate certain activities like files created, process started, process stops, files deleted, that should be able to correlate certain activities. So it can give you a meaningful answer to a CM saying, hey, there could be a ransomware attack on your network because all of these conditions were met, right? So the SIM must be able to automatically correlate and produce reports. And if needed, you should be able to build custom correlations too. And an important thing I want to talk about is the ability of your SIM to correlate certain things from other affected organizations, right? Now, what do I mean by this? Now, let's say an organization, let's call it organization A, was subject to a ransomware attack, right? Now, what organization A could do is organization A could update the details or the important indicators of the ransomware attack to a framework, right? And your SIM solution should be able to connect with that framework, download the indicators of the ransomware attack that was uploaded by the affected organization. So the next time there is a ransomware attack on your organization, your SIM will immediately raise a red flag, right? Stix or Taxi is one of those frameworks where most organizations who have been subject to security attacks around the world, they upload the details on a Stix server, and using a Taxi server in organizations, a Taxi server pulls the details of these attacks from a Stix server and updates the SIM solution, right? So the next time there is an attack that's occurred on another organization that could be occurring on yours as well, your SIM will immediately alert you. Let me illustrate this with an example. Let's say there is a malware with so and so name that targeted other organizations, that affected other organizations, right? Your SIM must be able to gather this information on the malware. And the next time a malware with a name like this exists on your network, or if a SIM detects something like that on the network, it should immediately let you know, right? So a SIM must be able to correlate and build certain reports or certain meaningful conclusions from the correlated logs. You should be able to build custom correlations. A SIM must be able to connect with other affected organizations via frameworks like Stix or Taxi. So the next time there is something malicious happening on your network that has already happened on another organization, you will immediately be alerted, right? This is just an example of how a blacklisted IP address was used to contact an organization's network, and a SIM immediately detected that blacklisted IP address because the IP address was shared by one of these sources, one of these threat intelligence sources, right? So threat intelligence and correlation is just another important feature that your SIM solutions must have. Your SIMs must be able to integrate with these threat intelligence frameworks like Malwarebytes or Webroot or Stix or Taxi, right? Now, The third important thing is the ability of your SIEM to to basically segregate certain reports, right? Now, collecting logs is important. That's great. Correlating logs is important. Also wonderful. But your SIEM must segregate the collected logs into meaningful reports, right? For example, let's say you've got a Windows system, right? Activities on your Windows system must be segregated into reports so you can truly capture what's happening where. For example, your firewall events, they can be in a separate report. Registry-based changes can be in a separate report, right? Changes to the Hyper-V machines, changes to the SQL databases, changes to web servers, every device on your network must be segregated, must be sectioned into separate reports so you can immediately pinpoint what's wrong, right? So that's an important feature of a SIEM, not just collect logs, not just correlate the collected logs, but to section the collected logs into meaningful reports based on device, based on operation, so you can truly understand what's happening, right? A SIEM solution, apart from having pre-packaged reports or pre-built reports that you can instantly use, must also be able to search custom logs, right? Now, a SIEM solution may have many reports like Windows-based reports, Linux-based reports, VPN-based reports, database-based reports, or an SQL server-based reports or web server-based reports. But there will be times when you need to leverage your SIEM solution to find specific logs based on certain parameters. For example, a process name, a username, a command executed, right? Or a file or folder location. Your SIEM must be able to find specific logs, meaning it must have conditions that you can apply using which you can find those logs that you need. If there are 1,000 events in your SIEM solution, you should be able to filter down those 1,000 events to a single event that you really want to find. And you should be able to find that event and even possibly make a report out of that event, right? So that's my point here. Apart from built-in reports, apart from pre-packaged reports, your SIEM must be able to go through all the other logs as well. So when a time arises when you need to find something specific based on a system name, based on a host name, based on a username, based on a process name, your SIEM should be able to do that, right? The fourth use case we've got here, the fourth important feature of a SIEM solution is the ability of your SIEM to sound an alarm if something has gone wrong, right? And the alarm must not be sounded every time. The alarm must be sounded only when it is necessary. Last thing you would want is your email or your phone's buzzing with unwanted alerts or false alerts from your SIEM solution, right? So a SIEM solution must be able to collect the logs, must be able to segregate the logs into reports, must allow you to search through the logs, and must also produce alerts based on priority, right? For example, if a domain controller service has been shut down, it's a high alert. That is something you need to know about, right? If there's a logon failure on a workstation, that's a low priority alert. So the alert must be delivered accordingly, right? Similarly, you should be able to split alerts based on devices, based on threshold. For example, if there are more than 10 logon failures occurring on a machine in under 1 minute, this could be an attack. So this is an alert that must be high priority. If there are alerts that are generated uh, outside of work hours, outside of business hours, then it should be handled accordingly, right? The ability of a SIEM solution not just ends with log management, log centralization, and log searching. A SIEM must be able to segregate alerts based on priority as well, right? And another important feature of your SIEM is its ability to basically manage incidents by using multiple people and not just one person. Security, even with a SIEM solution, security is not a single person's job, right? You should be able to give away the responsibility of security to trusted users in your network, right? For example, if there's a Windows service that has been stopped on your domain controller, you can assign that incident to be handled by the administrator. So the ticket for that particular incident can be handed to the administrator, right? If an end user is running a root command on a workstation, or if a firewall rule has been changed on a member server, these activities, sort of low priority, can be assigned to another user, not the admin, because the admin has his or her own set of things to deal with, right? So my point here is pretty simple. Whenever there are alerts on incidents that have occurred on your network inside your SIM solution, the alerts must be categorized. And not just that, the alerts, you should be able to assign these incidents, assign these alerts to separate people. There should be a ticketing system to assign specific alerts to different people on the network, right? And that is when things will happen more seamlessly. Another use case for this is, for example, let's say you have a Linux administrator and you have a Windows administrator. You could assign all Windows-based alerts to the Windows administrator. You could create a ticket, assign that to the Windows administrator. Any Linux-based changes, you could give that to a Linux administrator. Similarly, a database admin or a web server admin, right? When you split alerts, when you split incidents amongst multiple people, things become more streamlined, people become more responsible, and security becomes easy to manage, right? And last but not the least, generating alerts is good, segregating alerts is good, dividing alerts based on people, based on their role, based on priority is also good, but your SIM should be able to bind mitigation actions to a generated alert, right? If there is an alert on your network, and let's say you're away, let's say this is a Sunday, let's say you haven't had the time to check your SIM solution yet. How does your SIM deal with this alert? How can your SIM counter this particular alert? Let's say there's a registry key change on a domain controller, right? What happens then? Your SIM must be able to revert back the registry key change, or your SIM must disable logons to the domain controller until you, an admin, comes on the next day and checks whether what's happened is authorized or not, right? So my point here is pretty simple. Apart from assigning alerts to different users, you should be able to counter a generated alert. Whenever an alert is generated, having a workflow to counter that alert or to mitigate that alert would deem extremely useful. And this is a crucial capability of a SIM solution, right? So that's all about alerts. The fifth use case we have here is the compliance check use case, right? So like I said earlier, many people have said that the reason they've adopted SIMs is to help them with their compliance. And although a compliance feature is not a hard and fast rule that a SIM must have, it would be very helpful if your SIM supports compliance as well, right? And this is possible if your SIM answers all the four use cases that we've discussed so far. If your SIM is able to collect logs, if your SIM is able to segregate logs, if your SIM is able to generate logs, if your SIM is able to generate reports based on the logs it collected, you could use those reports to satisfy certain compliances like HIPAA, like GDPR compliance, right? So compliance is not a must-have for a SIM, but if your SIM meets with all the four requirements that we've been discussing from the start, making compliance reports out of it should not be a difficult task, right? Machine learning for your SIM is no longer a bonus add. Now, machine learning may sound like a fancy feature, may sound like something you don't really need, but machine learning is a requirement in today's SIM solutions. Now, why do I say this? Right? So machine learning in SIM solutions, machine learning is a way where you can detect any behavioral changes in your users, right? This is also known as user entity behavioral analytics. Now, what do I mean by this? Now, let's say there is a change or a modification that was done by a user which is outside of his normal behavior, right? A SIM solution will be able to detect that change and it will be able to immediately generate an alert, right? Let's say a firewall inbound rule has been changed, right? And this rule has never been changed before by that user or at a specific time. Then this is again a deviation from the normal state of the firewall. So your SIM will be able to generate an alert as well, right? So using machine learning, using UEBA or user entity behavioral analytics, what you could do is you could establish a baseline for what is normal in your network. And the next time something steps out of that baseline, something goes out of that established baseline, your SIM will immediately alert you, right? This is crucial not just for your users, but your other entities connected to your network, like firewalls, databases, file servers. If there is a file or a folder that is accessed by a user for the first time, this could be something malicious. The user could be stealing the data, so your SIM must be able to generate an alert. If there is a database configuration change occurring on your network at maybe, let's say, 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning, this is again a deviation from regular user behavior, and your SIM will be able to generate an alert, right? Your SIM can also must also be able to use scores based on which you can prioritize threats and you can determine which events must be tended to at the soonest, right? So machine learning or UEBA, a way to monitor what's normal in your network, establish a baseline of what's normal, and the next time there's a deviation in what's normal, you will immediately receive an alert by your SIM solution, right? The last use case for today's webinar is the price. Most people who have adopted a SIM solution, who have not taken the step to adopt a SIM solution yet, are all worried about the price. What if a SIM solution breaks the IT budget, right? So this is an important thing we need to look into, and flat pricing is the best option to manage SIM costs. Now, what do I mean by flat pricing? Uh, if your SIM solution, if you already have one, or if you're planning to purchase one, if the SIM solution is priced based on the amount of logs or the number of logs it deals with, it's not a good place to be in, right? Because in today's world, the number of devices connected to the network, the number of logs generated in the network, if your SIM is priced based on the volume of logs, it's not a good place to be in because you will be burning out money for no apparent reason, right? Let's say you enabled some logs. Let's say another user in your network has enabled certain logs, and these logs have accumulated to a lot inside your SIM solution. And if you're charged based on this simple mistake, it would break your IT budget, right? So the alternative to this problem is to have a SIM solution that charges you based on the devices that it audits, that it monitors, that it fetches the logs from, and not based on the volume of the logs, right? So this is also known as flat pricing, a way where you are charged based on the number of devices and not based on how many logs or the number of logs are in your SIM solution, right? Another crucial feature of a SIM solution is log retention and archival. Now, let's say you have an on-premise SIM solution, right? How long can the SIM database retain your logs? And if the SIM database becomes overwhelmed, if the SIM database is filled with logs, what do? Is there a way where you can remove the logs from the SIM database and archive it on a local server and bring it back whenever you need to, right? So your SIM database must be able to retain logs. If your SIM database becomes full, what are the next steps of action? Can you archive all these logs? Can you store these logs anywhere and bring them in whenever you want to? This should be another crucial feature of a SIM solution, right? And if you are adopting a cloud-based SIM solution, now generally most cloud-based SIM solutions are based on the amount of storage in the cloud. So if your logs, they occupy so much storage in the cloud, the more you have to pay. So how is the pricing for that, right? Is the pricing justified based on the number of logs you store in the cloud? For example, if you purchase a cloud-based SIM solution for 100 GB, is the price for that 100 GB of storage in the cloud justified, or is it too expensive? That is something you need to look into as well, right? So for an on-premise solution, your SIM must be able to retain the logs for the longest it can. It must be able to archive the logs, and it must be able to bring back the logs whenever it can. Bring back the logs whenever you want to. So you should be able to reload the logs into your SIM solution. And for a cloud-based SIM solution, you're generally charged based on the cloud storage, and you need to check if the pricing is justified for the amount of storage that the SIM cloud provider offers, right? So Log360 is a single solution for all your SIM needs, right? So let me quickly take you through the tool right here. So this is our SIM solution. Everything we discussed today can be addressed by this SIEM solution right here. If you need alerts on what's happening on your environment, this will immediately get you what you need, right? If the reports we spoke about, where reports need to be categorized, need to be sectioned, let me quickly log back in again. If the reports on your network, then the segregation of logs based on different reports, based on devices, based on operations on the devices is also achievable with Log360. As you can see, for Windows, we've got multiple reports that are segregated very well. So you can truly find and understand what's happening on your network. It's segregated into modules, into sub-modules, as you can see. Uh, every application, every device connected to your network has separate reports that are easy to read, that are easy to filter, that are easy to search, so you can easily find the log that you need, right? So this SIEM solution also does that for you. And we spoke about something called a custom log search feature, where using certain conditions, using certain parameters, you should be able to find the logs that you need. And this search feature will help you do just that, where you can search for logs based on devices. You can search for logs based on and or conditions as well. For example, if username happens to be this, right? You could combine that with an and or condition, and you can search and you can find the logs that you need. And once you find the logs, you can create an instant report out of the logs as well, right? We spoke about correlation, where your SIEM must be able to automatically correlate and detect certain activities on the network. We've got a few built-in reports for you, based on which your SIEM can draw conclusions, based on which your SIEM can tell you if there is something malicious happening. If you want to build custom correlations, you can, of course, build that as well. All you got to do is click on Manage Rules. You can create a correlation rule. You can build whichever rule that you want on your network. Your SIEM must be able to categorize alerts on your network based on their priority. For example, critical, trouble alerts, attention alerts. We can do that for you. And if I click on Add an Alert Profile right here, do you see this called Workflow? This is a way where you can design an incident management workflow. If an alert is generated, how do you deal with it? What are the next steps of action? How do you counter that alert? Your SIEM solution, this SIEM solution that you're looking at, can help you with that as well. And what's more, if I head into log.me right here, these are the different logs. Give me a second. I have a weak internet connection right here. So if I head into log.me right here, these are the different logs that your SIEM solution, that this particular SIEM solution supports. So network devices, Unix or Linux systems, hypervisors, other logs. If you want any new logs to be listed here, you can always request them and we will notify you once they are made available. So everything we've discussed today, log collection, reports, alerts, incident management, the ticketing system where you can assign separate alerts to different people, everything can be done with our SIEM solution right here, right? So Log360, a single SIEM solution, and not to forget, we also have Log360 Cloud. So if you want to choose a cloud version of the SIEM solution, that is possible as well, right? And before I wrap up with this webinar, I just wanted to share something very important with you. This is something we have worked on. It's called IT security under attack. And over here, we worked on, let me quickly sign up here. And over here, we have worked on different attacks on your network, right? For example, the password spray attack, where you get to know how a password spray attack works. You get to see a live demo of the attack, and you get to see how a SIEM solution like Log360 can help detect such attacks on your network. Not just Active Directory environments, we've done attacks on Windows environments, we've done attacks on Azure environments, on AWS environments, and we will keep adding attacks every month. So let me quickly share a link to this page in the chat window so you can take a look at it and you can see how Log360 can help detect certain attacks on your network, right? So I've just put the log in the chat window right here. Do take a look at it. do walk through the page. And if you need proof as to how Log360 can detect certain specific attacks, then this page will do that for you, right? So that is about it for today. And before I wrap up, before I uh, sign off from this webinar, a quick poll. Now you will find a question flash across the screen in the next 1 minute. 1 second, I'm so sorry. So you should find a question flash across your screen. If you can help me out with the answers, that would be very, very helpful. Just a minute of your time, and I promise I will be out of your hair. I do see a few questions coming in. Please give me 1 more minute, and I promise to answer your questions. Just another minute, guys. Perfect. I would love to hear your thoughts, guys. I hope you found this webinar informative. I hope you were able to identify what makes up or what are the key capabilities of the SIM solution. If there's any different you want me to do, if there's anything new you want me to do for you, please do let me know, and I'll do my best to implement it in my upcoming sessions. Thank you for your responses. Much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you so much for your responses, guys. Thank you for your responses. Just a few more seconds, and I promise I will be out of your hair. Thank you for your responses. Much appreciated. So brilliant. Oh, guys, I just have 1 or 2 questions that have come in the chat window. So yeah, I'll reach out to you on your email ID probably within the next half an hour or next 20 minutes. So do bear with me. I will reach out to you in detail on your respective email addresses. The recordings will be sent to you on your email addresses probably within the next 1 to 2 days. So yeah, if you've got any questions, you've got my email ID right in front of you. So do drop me an email. And yes, thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. For those of you who've asked me questions, please do not worry. I will be getting back to you very, very shortly, probably within the next 15 to 20 minutes, right? Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Stay home, stay safe. Thank you. Bye-bye.